They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but mine was served ice cold on what should have been the happiest day of someone else's life. Standing in that cathedral, watching my former best friend Sarah walk down the aisle in the dress we'd picked out together, knowing what I was about to unleash, it felt like the universe finally balancing the scales. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from the moment my perfect world cracked wide open and everything I thought I knew turned to ash. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my life imploded. I remember because Tuesdays were our days, mine and Sarah's. We'd been best friends since college, 10 years of shared secrets, inside jokes, and dreams about our futures. She was supposed to be my maid of honor. We had it all planned out, my wedding to Marcus in June, then hers to whoever she'd end up with someday. We used to joke that we'd probably have to coordinate our pregnancies so our kids could grow up together. God, how naive I was. I was sitting in my apartment, surrounded by wedding planning chaos. Fabric swatches, vendor contracts, and that stupid 3-ring binder I'd been obsessing over for months. The wedding was only 3 months away, and I was drowning in details. Marcus had been working late again, something about a big merger at his law firm, so I was flying solo through the task of choosing between ivory and champagne table linens. Riveting stuff. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Emergency! Can you come over? Need to talk." My stomach dropped. Sarah wasn't dramatic. When she said emergency, she meant it. I grabbed my keys and drove the 15 minutes to her apartment, my mind racing through possibilities. Was she sick? Had something happened to her family? Was she having another crisis about her job at the marketing firm? I used my spare key. We'd had keys to each other's places since our early 20s, another symbol of our unshakable trust. The apartment was dark, except for the light spilling from her bedroom. "Sarah?" I called out, dropping my purse by the door. "Are you okay?" No answer. I walked toward her bedroom, my heart rate picking up. What I saw through the cracked door stopped me cold. It wasn't Sarah having an emergency. It was Sarah having sex. With Marcus. My fiancé of 8 months. The man I was supposed to marry in 93 days. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, watching them move together in her bed. The bed where I'd spent countless nights having sleepovers, sharing dreams, and consoling her through breakups. The bed where she'd held me while I cried about my father's death 2 years ago. Now it was where she was destroying my life. The engagement ring on my finger suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The 3-carat solitaire Marcus had spent 2 months' salary on, the ring I'd been so proud to show off, felt like a joke. A lie made of diamond and white gold. I backed away slowly, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. This had to be some horrible nightmare. Sarah and Marcus barely tolerated each other, or at least that's what I'd thought. She always complained that he was too serious, too focused on work. He'd mentioned that he found her frivolous, too concerned with appearances. When had that shifted into this? I made it to my car before the first sob escaped. Then the floodgates opened. I sat in my Honda Civic in Sarah's driveway, crying so hard I couldn't breathe, while my best friend and my fiancé continued their betrayal 10 feet above my head. The practical part of my brain finally kicked in. I needed to get out of there before they finished and came looking for me. With shaking hands, I started the car and drove home, though I have no memory of the actual drive. Muscle memory guided me through traffic lights and turns while my conscious mind reeled. Back in my apartment, I stared at the wedding planning materials scattered across my coffee table. The hotel contract for the reception, the florist's proposal, the menu we'd spent hours perfecting, the seating chart that had Sarah at the head table, right beside me. All of it felt like evidence of my own stupidity. How long had this been going on? How many late nights at the office were actually late nights in Sarah's bed? How many times had I complained to her about Marcus working too much while she nodded sympathetically, knowing exactly where he really was? My phone rang. Marcus. I stared at his name on the screen, my chest tight with rage and heartbreak. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Then again. I finally answered on the 4th call. "Hey babe," he said, and his voice sounded normal. Casual. Like he hadn't just been inside my best friend. "Sorry I missed your call earlier. This merger is killing me. I'll probably be here until midnight again." The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. I wondered how much practice he'd had. "That's okay," I managed to say, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I'm just working on wedding stuff anyway. You're amazing for handling all of that." I know I haven't been much help lately, but after this deal closes, I promise I'll be more involved. More involved, like he was doing me a favor by participating in planning our own wedding. Our wedding that was apparently just an elaborate joke to him. Marcus, I said, testing something. What do you think of Sarah? A pause. Just a beat too long. Sarah? I don't know, she's fine. Your friend. Why? Just wondering. She's been acting a little strange lately. Strange how? I can't put my finger on it. Different. Like she's hiding something. Another pause. People change, Emma. Maybe she's just stressed about work or something. Right, work. That's definitely what was stressing her out. You're probably right, I said. I should let you get back to work. I love you, he said, and the words felt like acid in my ears. Love you too. I hung up and immediately ran to the bathroom, where I threw up until there was nothing left. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in our bed, the bed Marcus and I shared, where he'd proposed 6 months earlier, and stared at the ceiling, my mind churning. Every interaction between Marcus and Sarah over the past few months replayed in my head with new context. The way she'd insisted on helping him plan my surprise birthday party, how they'd both disappeared for 20 minutes during my work happy hour last month, the knowing look they'd exchanged when I'd mentioned wanting to postpone the wedding until fall because planning was so stressful. They'd probably been relieved. More time to sneak around before they had to figure out how to break up with me. As the sun rose, I came to a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I was going to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went, and then I was going to make them pay. You see, I knew something about Sarah that Marcus didn't. Something that would destroy not just their relationship, but her entire carefully constructed life. Sarah wasn't just my best friend. She was also a pathological liar and a fraud. And I had proof. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. First, I needed to gather intelligence. I called in sick to work, which wasn't really lying since I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and spent the day becoming a detective. I started with Marcus's credit card statements. We'd opened a joint account for wedding expenses, and I had access to his personal accounts for transparency, his idea, ironically. The digital trail was damning. Dinner charges at restaurants I'd never been to on nights he claimed to be working late. Hotel charges on business trips that were supposed to be day trips. A jewelry purchase from 3 weeks ago for $800. Definitely not for me, since he'd already bought my ring. But the worst part was the pattern. Looking at the timestamps and dates, I could see that this had been going on for at least 4 months. 4 months of lies while I planned our wedding, while I agonized over place cards and dreamed about our future children. Next, I hacked Sarah's social media. I knew her passwords. We'd shared everything for years. Her Instagram was a masterclass in deception. Photos of girls' nights that I wasn't invited to, tagged at restaurants where Marcus's credit card showed purchases, selfies with captions about exciting new developments, and feeling blessed, with strategically cropped backgrounds that I now realized could have hidden Marcus. The smoking gun was in her deleted messages. Most people don't know that Instagram saves your deleted conversations for 30 days. Marcus was in there, along with months of planning their betrayal. Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell Emma you're working late again? She's so absorbed in wedding planning she barely notices when I'm gone. Do you feel bad about this? She's my best friend. We'll figure it out after the wedding. 1 more month and then we can tell her together. Tell me together. How considerate of them. But the message that made my blood run cold was from 2 weeks ago. I've been thinking, what if we don't wait until after the wedding? What if something happened that made her call it off? Would that be easier? What are you thinking? I could plant some evidence that you're cheating. Make it look like it's with someone else. Then she'd break up with you, and after a few months we could find comfort in each other. That's actually not a bad idea. She'd be hurt, but not betrayed. And we'd look like we were just helping each other heal. They were planning to gaslight me, to make me think Marcus was cheating with a stranger, then swoop in to comfort me while they got together. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. But here's what they didn't know. I had nuclear weapons in my arsenal. 3 years ago, Sarah had confided in me about something that could ruin her life. She'd been drunk at my birthday party, crying about her job stress, when she'd admitted that she'd faked her college transcripts to get her marketing position. Not just fudged her GPA, completely fabricated a degree from a university she'd never attended. She'd shown me the fake documents she'd had made, terrified that someone would find out. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Last year, during another drunken confession, she'd told me about her side business. Sarah had been stealing client information from her marketing firm and selling it to competitors. Names, contact lists, proprietary strategies. She'd made over $50,000 selling company secrets. She'd made me promise never to tell anyone, and like a loyal friend, I'd kept her secret. Sarah's entire life was built on lies and theft. Her job, her apartment, her car, all funded by criminal activity. And I had texts, emails, and photos to prove it. The plan started forming in my mind as I sat surrounded by evidence of their betrayal. They wanted to humiliate me, to make me the pathetic, jilted bride while they rode off into the sunset together. Fine, but I was going to make sure their fairy tale ended with both of them in ruins. I started with the wedding venue. Instead of canceling, I called the coordinator and made a special request. I wanted to add a video tribute to the ceremony, a slideshow that would play during the processional, something romantic and personal. The coordinator was thrilled. Apparently, it was trending on social media. Next, I visited Sarah. She opened the door looking guilty and nervous, which almost made me laugh. She had no idea what was coming. "Emma, I wasn't expecting you. Is everything okay?" "Actually, no," I said, pushing past her into the apartment. "I need to talk to you about something." Her face went pale. "What's wrong?" I sat down on her couch, the same couch where we'd planned my bachelorette party, and looked directly at her. "I think Marcus is cheating on me." The relief that washed over her face was almost comical. She thought I suspected someone else. "Oh, honey, no. What makes you think that? He's been working so much lately and he seems distant. I found a charge on his credit card for jewelry that wasn't for me." This was true, of course, but not for the reasons she thought. Sarah moved into full supportive best friend mode, sitting beside me and taking my hands. "I'm sure there's an explanation. Maybe it's a surprise for the wedding?" "Maybe," I said, letting my voice break slightly. "But Sarah, if I find out he's been lying to me, I don't know what I'll do. This wedding, our life together, it would all be over." She squeezed my hands, playing her part perfectly. "It'll be okay. We'll figure it out together. You know I'll always be here for you, right?" "I know," I whispered, looking into the eyes of my betrayer. "You're the most important person in my life. I don't know what I'd do without you." The guilt flickered across her face for just a moment before she pushed it away. "You'll never have to find out." That night, I started building my evidence file. Screenshots of their messages, copies of Sarah's fake transcripts and the emails about selling client information, photos of the fake jewelry receipts and hotel charges. I organized everything into a timeline that painted a clear picture of their 4-month affair and Sarah's criminal activities. But I wasn't done gathering intelligence. I needed more. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Janet who specialized in infidelity cases. I told her I suspected my fiancé was cheating and needed concrete proof. She was thorough and discreet, and within a week she had photos and video evidence of Marcus and Sarah together, entering hotels, kissing in restaurant parking lots. Marcus leaving Sarah's apartment at dawn on days he was supposed to be at work conferences in other cities. The photos were like getting stabbed in the heart over and over again. Seeing them touch each other, laugh together, look at each other with the intimacy that should have been mine, it nearly broke me, but it also fueled my determination. While Janet gathered evidence, I played the part of the blissfully ignorant fiancé. I attended dress fittings with Sarah, where she gushed about how beautiful I looked and how lucky Marcus was. I had dinner with Marcus, where he apologized for being so busy with work and promised to make it up to me after the wedding. I smiled and nodded and planned their destruction. The hardest part was the engagement party Marcus's parents threw for us 3 weeks before the wedding. All our friends and family gathered to celebrate our love story, while Marcus and Sarah stood on opposite sides of the room, carefully avoiding each other. I watched them sneak glances when they thought no one was looking. I saw Sarah excuse herself to the bathroom, followed 5 minutes later by Marcus. They came back separately, Sarah's lipstick slightly smudged. Marcus's mother pulled me aside during the party. "You look tired, dear. Are you feeling all right?" "Just wedding stress," I said, which was technically true. "Well, you'll be so happy once it's all over. Marcus seems absolutely devoted to you. I've never seen him so happy." I smiled and nodded while thinking about the hotel receipt from 2 nights ago. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sarah suggested we have one last girls' weekend before I became a married woman. We drove to a spa resort 2 hours away, the same resort where Marcus had told me he was attending a legal conference last month. Ironic, really. As we sat by the pool, Sarah started getting sentimental. "I can't believe you're actually getting married," she said, sipping her mimosa. "It feels like just yesterday we were in college, talking about what our weddings would be like." "I know. Sometimes I can't believe Marcus and I found each other. You're perfect together," she said, and I had to admire her acting skills. "He adores you." "Do you really think so?" "Sometimes I worry he's having second thoughts. He's been so distant lately." Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm sure it's just work stress. Men handle stress differently than we do." "You're probably right. I just want everything to be perfect, you know? I want our marriage to last forever." "It will," she said firmly. "You and Marcus are solid. Nothing could come between you." The audacity was breathtaking. That night, while Sarah slept in the bed next to mine, I finalized my plans. The wedding was in 10 days. I'd already submitted my romantic video tribute to the wedding coordinator. I'd prepared copies of all my evidence to distribute to key people at the reception. I'd even drafted the social media posts that would go live simultaneously across all platforms. But I wanted to add one more element, something that would ensure Sarah's professional destruction alongside her personal humiliation. I called Sarah's boss on Monday morning, identifying myself as a concerned former client. I told him I had information about potential corporate espionage involving one of his employees, and I'd like to meet privately to discuss it. He agreed to see me Wednesday afternoon. Sarah's boss, David, was a straight-laced man in his 50s who took corporate ethics seriously. When I showed him the evidence of Sarah's fake credentials and her theft of client information, his face went through several different shades of red. "This is substantial," he said, reviewing the documents. "If this is accurate, we're looking at fraud, theft of proprietary information, and breach of fiduciary duty. We could face lawsuits from affected clients." "I thought you should know," I said quietly. I struggled with whether to come forward, but I couldn't let it continue. "You did the right thing. This investigation will need to be thorough, but based on what you've shown me, Ms. Chen will likely face immediate termination and possible criminal charges." "Perfect. When will you be addressing this with her?" "Given the severity, probably by Friday. We'll need to secure her access and conduct interviews with affected clients." Friday, 2 days before the wedding. The timing couldn't be better. With Sarah's professional destruction scheduled, I turned my attention to the final preparations for the wedding day reveal. I'd arranged for multiple cameras to capture the ceremony, officially for our wedding video, but really to document the moment my revenge unfolded. I'd also made special arrangements with several key people. Marcus's law firm partners would be receiving copies of his affair evidence Monday morning, along with documentation of how his personal conduct might affect their reputation. Sarah's friends and family would get their packages Sunday evening, right after the wedding festivities ended. But the centerpiece would be the wedding day itself. In front of 150 of our closest friends and family members, I was going to expose every lie, every betrayal, every crime. The video tribute I'd created wasn't a romantic montage. It was a comprehensive presentation of evidence that would play on the screens throughout the cathedral while Sarah walked down the aisle as my maid of honor. Because you see, I'd made one more decision. I wasn't calling off the wedding. I was going through with the entire ceremony, letting Marcus think he was getting away with everything, letting Sarah believe she was about to help me marry the man she was sleeping with. And then, at the moment when the officiant asked if anyone had any reason why we shouldn't be wed, I was going to speak up. The irony was delicious. They'd planned to wait until after the wedding to reveal their relationship, probably thinking it would be less devastating for me. Instead, they were going to experience their destruction in the most public, humiliating way possible. 3 days before the wedding, everything was in place. The venue was decorated with white roses and fairy lights, exactly as I'd dreamed. The cake was a 3-tier masterpiece with our initials intertwined on top. The photographer was briefed on capturing candid moments throughout the ceremony. Sarah's termination letter was sitting on her boss's desk, scheduled for delivery Friday morning. I should have felt satisfied, but instead I felt hollow. 10 years of friendship, 8 months of engagement, all destroyed by 2 people I'd trusted completely. The woman who knew my deepest fears and biggest dreams. The man I'd planned to grow old with. They'd chosen each other over any loyalty to me, and now they were going to pay the price. But there was still one more surprise coming. Something even I hadn't planned. Friday morning, Sarah called me sobbing. "Emma, something terrible happened. I got fired. I was in my apartment, getting a manicure from the mobile nail tech I'd hired for wedding prep." "What? Why?" "They're saying I falsified my credentials and stole client information." Someone reported me to David with evidence. It's all lies, Emma. Someone is trying to destroy me. The victim act was Oscar-worthy. That's horrible. Who would do something like that? I don't know. Maybe a jealous coworker? They're threatening to press criminal charges. What am I going to do? Have you talked to a lawyer? I can't afford a lawyer. And now with the wedding this weekend? She trailed off, sobbing. Hey, I said gently, don't worry about the wedding. That's the least important thing right now. We need to focus on clearing your name. You're such a good friend, Emma. I don't deserve you. She really didn't. We'll figure this out together. I promised. Just try to focus on making it through the weekend, okay? After the wedding, we'll sit down and go through everything. Okay, she whispered. I love you, Em. Love you too. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the mirror. Tomorrow, I was going to destroy both of their lives in front of everyone we knew. Sarah would go from unemployed to completely unemployable. Marcus would lose his reputation, his job prospects, and probably his law license when the Bar Association reviewed his conduct. But tonight, I was going to get the best night's sleep I'd had in 2 months, because tomorrow, justice would finally be served. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and drizzly, which felt appropriate. I woke up in the bridal suite at the hotel, surrounded by my bridesmaids, Sarah, my sister Kate, and Marcus's sister Jessica. They were all bustling around, chattering about hair and makeup schedules, completely oblivious to what was coming. Sarah looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she kept checking her phone obsessively, probably hoping for good news about her job situation. She was trying to put on a brave face for my special day, but the stress was written all over her face. You okay? I asked her as the makeup artist worked on my eyes. Just tired. This whole work situation has me messed up. But today isn't about me. It's about you looking absolutely stunning. She was right about one thing. I did look stunning. The dress was perfect, a fitted bodice with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing skirt that made me feel like a princess. My hair was swept up in an elegant chignon with small white flowers woven throughout. The makeup artist had given me a glowing, radiant look that photographed beautifully. I looked like the happiest bride in the world. No one would ever guess that in 3 hours I was going to detonate a bomb that would destroy multiple lives. As we finished getting ready, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Can't wait to marry you today. You're going to be the most beautiful bride ever. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding, can't wait to see you at the altar. 2 hours before the ceremony, I excused myself from the bridal suite and made my way to the venue's media room, where I met with the AV technician one final time. You're sure about the timing? I asked him. Absolutely. The video will start playing on all screens as soon as the processional music begins. It's queued up and ready to go. And the backup copies? Uploaded to the venue's Wi-Fi network. Anyone who connects will see the presentation pop up automatically on their devices. Perfect. Even if someone tried to shut down the main screens, every phone and tablet in the cathedral would still display my evidence. Thank you, I said, shaking his hand. This means everything to me. Back in the bridal suite, it was time for final preparations. Sarah helped me into my dress, her hands shaking slightly as she fastened the tiny buttons up the back. You look perfect, she whispered, tears in her eyes. Marcus is so lucky. If only she knew. My mother arrived for final photos, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My baby girl, she said, hugging me carefully to avoid messing up my dress. I'm so proud of you. Your father would have been so happy to see this day. That almost broke me. My dad had passed away 2 years ago, and he'd never get to walk me down the aisle. He'd never know that his little girl had become strong enough to stand up for herself when the people she loved most betrayed her. He's here in spirit, I said, touching the locket around my neck that contained his photo. Kate, my maid of honor, gathered everyone for a final photo. We posed together, arms around each other, smiling brightly. Sarah stood right beside me, her arm around my waist, both of us beaming at the camera. In 30 minutes, that photo would be the last peaceful moment of her life. As we prepared to leave for the ceremony, Sarah pulled me aside one more time. Emma, she said, taking my hands, I need you to know how much your friendship means to me. You've been like a sister to me for 10 years. Whatever happens in life, I want you to remember that I love you. The words sounded like a confession, or maybe a goodbye. For a split second, I wondered if she was about to tell me the truth, to come clean before it was too late. But then she smiled and squeezed my hands. Now let's go get you married. The opportunity passed. Whatever chance she'd had to save herself, she'd chosen to let it slip away. We arrived at the cathedral in a white limousine, and I could see guests already filing into the building. Through the tinted windows, I spotted Marcus's law partners, Sarah's extended family, college friends I hadn't seen in years. All of them dressed in their finest clothes, ready to celebrate what they thought was going to be the happiest day of my life. In the bridal preparation room adjacent to the cathedral, I had a few moments alone while everyone else went to check on final details. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror, the blushing bride, ready to pledge her eternal love. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's done. Subject terminated from employment as of 4 p.m. yesterday. Criminal investigation begins Monday. D. David, Sarah's boss. Even he wanted to make sure I knew justice was being served. I tucked my phone away and took a deep breath. In 15 minutes, the processional would begin. In 20 minutes, my video would start playing. In 30 minutes, everyone in that cathedral would know the truth about Marcus and Sarah. There was no going back now. A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Emma, it's time. Kate peeked her head in, radiant in her navy blue bridesmaid dress. Behind her, I could see Sarah and Jessica, both looking nervous and excited. Ready? Kate asked. I picked up my bouquet, white roses and baby's breath, just like I'd always dreamed, and nodded. I've never been more ready. As we lined up for the processional, I caught a glimpse of Marcus through the doorway. He was standing at the altar in his black tuxedo, looking handsome and confident, chatting with his groomsmen. He had no idea that his life was about to implode. The music began, Paschal bells canon in D, just like every traditional wedding. Sarah, as my maid of honor, would walk down the aisle first, followed by Kate and Jessica. Then would come my grand entrance. Sarah looked back at me one more time, gave me a trembling smile, and stepped into the aisle. As she began her slow walk toward the altar, toward the man she'd been sleeping with behind my back, the screens throughout the cathedral flickered to life, and my revenge began to unfold. The first image that appeared on the screens was innocent enough. A photo of Marcus and me from our first date, both of us laughing over dinner at that little Italian place downtown. Several guests smiled and pointed at the screens, expecting a sweet romantic montage. But then the timeline began. The next slide showed Marcus's credit card statement from 4 months ago, with hotel charges highlighted in red. The timestamp in the corner read, "While Emma planned engagement party." A murmur rippled through the congregation as people tried to understand what they were seeing. Sarah had made it halfway down the aisle when the third slide appeared, a screenshot of her text message to Marcus. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell Emma you're working late again." The font was large enough to read from the back of the cathedral. She stopped walking. I watched from the doorway as her bouquet slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. The white roses scattered at her feet like fallen snow. Marcus was staring at the screens with the expression of a man watching his own execution. His best man, his brother David, leaned over and whispered something urgently in his ear, but Marcus didn't respond. He was frozen in place, watching 4 months of lies play out in high definition. The fourth slide was a photo from the private investigator, Marcus leaving Sarah's apartment at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. He was still wearing the same shirt he'd worn to dinner with me the night before, when he'd told me he was going straight home to prep for an early morning meeting. The gasps from the congregation were audible now. I could see people pulling out their phones, not to take photos of the bride, but to record the evidence playing on the screens. Thanks to the backup system I'd arranged, the presentation was automatically loading on every device connected to the venue's Wi-Fi. There was no stopping it now. Sarah had turned around and was looking directly at me. Her face was chalk white, and I could see her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear what she was saying over the growing buzz of shocked conversations filling the cathedral. The fifth slide was devastating, a photo of Sarah and Marcus kissing passionately in the parking lot behind Chez Laurent, the restaurant where she and I had celebrated my promotion just last month. While I was inside calling for the check, they were outside planning their next rendezvous. Marcus's mother, sitting in the front row, stood up abruptly. I could see her clutching her husband's arm, her face a mask of horror and confusion. Several other family members were standing now too, pointing at the screens, their voices rising in a cacophony of shock and outrage. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The sixth slide displayed Sarah's fake college transcript, the one she'd shown me 3 years ago during her drunken confession. Official letterhead, forged signatures, courses she'd never taken at a university she'd never attended. The slide header read, "How Sarah Chen Built Her Career on Lies." I heard someone scream. It might have been Sarah's mother. Sarah was running now, her long dress bunched in her hands as she fled back up the aisle toward me. Her face was streaked with tears and makeup, her carefully styled hair coming loose from its pins. She looked like a woman running from a house fire. "Emma!" she screamed as she reached me. "Emma, please! Stop this!" I stepped aside to let her pass, my bouquet still perfectly arranged in my hands, my expression serene. "Stop what?" I asked calmly. The 7th slide appeared, bank records showing deposits of $50,000 into Sarah's account over the past 18 months, with dates corresponding to major client presentations at her firm. The header read, "Corporate Espionage, How Sarah Chen Sold Company Secrets." Sarah grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into the delicate lace of my sleeve. "You have to stop this. Please. This will ruin me." "Like you ruined me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The 8th slide was a compilation of hotel receipts and restaurant charges, creating a timeline of Marcus's lies. Every work conference in another city, every late night at the office, every client dinner. That was actually a romantic evening with my best friend. I could see Marcus pushing through the crowd trying to reach us. His face was red with humiliation and panic. Behind him, his law partners were standing together in a tight group, their expressions grim. They understood immediately what this meant for their firm's reputation. "Emma!" Marcus shouted over the chaos. "Let me explain." I turned to look at him, this man I'd planned to spend my life with, who was supposed to protect and cherish me. "Explain what, Marcus?" "Which part? The 4 months of lying to my face, or the part where you planned to gaslight me into thinking you were cheating with someone else?" His face went white. He hadn't expected me to know about that particular conversation. The 9th slide appeared, the smoking gun message thread between Sarah and Marcus discussing their plan to frame him for cheating with a stranger, then comfort me through the betrayal, before eventually getting together themselves. The cathedral was in complete chaos now. People were shouting, crying, demanding explanations. Some guests were pushing toward the exits, wanting to escape the spectacle. Others were crowding closer, phones raised, recording every moment for posterity. Sarah's boss, David, was standing near the back of the cathedral with his wife. I could see the recognition dawning on his face as he connected the dots between yesterday's firing and today's revelations. He was already reaching for his phone, probably calling his legal team to discuss damage control. "You planned this?" Sarah said, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "You knew, and you planned this whole thing, just like you planned to destroy my life," I replied. "The only difference is, my plan is working." The 10th slide was a series of photos showing Marcus's pattern of deception. His car parked at Sarah's apartment complex when he was supposed to be at the office, the two of them holding hands while walking into the Marriott downtown, Sarah wearing the $800 necklace that had appeared on Marcus's credit card statement. Marcus finally reached us, pushing through the crowd of outraged guests. His perfect hair was disheveled, his bow tie askew. "Emma, please," he begged. "Not like this. We can talk about this privately." "Privately?" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Like all those private conversations you had with my best friend? Like the private hotel rooms and the private lies?" The 11th slide displayed Sarah's termination letter from her employer, dated the previous day. The header read, "Immediate termination for fraud and theft of proprietary information." "You got me fired," Sarah whispered, the reality finally sinking in. "You actually got me fired." "I didn't get you fired," I corrected. "Your criminal activity got you fired. I just made sure the right people knew about it." Marcus grabbed my other arm, and for a moment I was flanked by both of my betrayers, the people who had destroyed my faith in love and friendship. "Emma, I love you," he said desperately. "What happened with Sarah?" "It was a mistake." "It meant nothing." Sarah's head snapped toward him, her eyes flashing with hurt and anger. Even in the middle of their destruction, they were still capable of hurting each other. "Nothing?" she hissed. 4 months of nothing? Planning a future together was nothing? "You told me you loved me," she said, her voice breaking. "You said Emma didn't understand you like I did." The 12th slide appeared right on cue. A screenshot of Marcus's text to Sarah from 2 weeks ago. "I've never felt this way about anyone. You make me feel alive in a way Emma never has. I can't wait until we can be together openly." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd read them dozens of times while preparing my evidence. Seeing them displayed 20 feet high for everyone to witness made them feel fresh and devastating all over again. Marcus's mother was crying openly now, her husband's arm around her shoulders. I could see the profound disappointment in her eyes as she looked at her son. She'd raised him better than this. They all had. "Get away from her," a voice boomed from behind me. I turned to see my brother-in-law Tom pushing through the crowd, his face dark with rage. "Both of you, get the hell away from Emma." Kate was right behind him, tears streaming down her face. She took my arm gently, trying to guide me away from the chaos. "Come on, Em," she said softly. "You don't need to see any more of this." But I wasn't finished yet. There were still 3 slides left in my presentation. The 13th slide was a comprehensive timeline showing how Sarah had systematically stolen client information from her firm and sold it to competitors. Email timestamps, wire transfer records, client lists that had been copied and distributed. The header read, "How Sarah Chen made $50,000 selling trade secrets." David, Sarah's former boss, was now on his phone speaking urgently to someone. I caught fragments of his conversation. Criminal investigation ... Fraud charges. Client notifications. Sarah seemed to shrink as she realized the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just public humiliation. This was the complete destruction of her professional life. She would never work in marketing again. Hell, she'd be lucky if she didn't end up in prison. The 14th slide showed bank records proving that Sarah had used her stolen money to fund her lifestyle, the apartment she couldn't otherwise afford, the car payments, the designer clothes she wore to company events. Every luxury in her life had been paid for with blood money. "You kept evidence of everything," Marcus said, and there was something like awe in his voice. "For how long? How long have you known?" "Long enough," I replied. "Long enough to understand exactly who you both really are." The final slide was the most damning of all, a photo I'd taken myself the night I discovered their affair. I'd gone back to Sarah's apartment after that first devastating discovery, and I'd waited outside with a telephoto lens camera until they left together the next morning. The image showed them walking to Marcus's car, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at something. The timestamp proved it was taken on a day when Marcus had told me he was sick with food poisoning. But it wasn't just the photo that made this slide devastating. It was the text overlay I'd added, "To everyone who loved and trusted us, Emma Matthews." The message was clear. This wasn't just about exposing their affair. This was about showing everyone exactly how easily they'd been manipulated and lied to. Every person in that cathedral had been deceived by Marcus and Sarah's performance over the past 4 months. The presentation ended, and the screens went black. For a moment, the cathedral was eerily quiet except for the sound of muffled sobs and whispered conversations. Then all hell broke loose. Marcus's law partners were huddled together, clearly discussing the implications for their firm. A senior partner named Richard approached Marcus with a face like stone. "We need to talk," he said curtly. "Now." "Richard, I can explain," Marcus started. "No," Richard cut him off. "You can explain to the partnership committee, and probably to the State Bar Association." Sarah's family was in chaos. Her parents, who had flown in from California for what they thought was their daughter's best friend's wedding, were demanding answers. Her father, a stern man who'd always been proud of his daughter's professional success, looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Sarah Louise Chen," her mother said, her voice shaking with anger and disappointment. "What have you done?" But Sarah was beyond responding coherently. She was sobbing hysterically, her carefully applied makeup running in black streaks down her cheeks. The woman who had been so composed, so calculating in her betrayal, had completely fallen apart under the weight of public exposure. My own family was rallying around me. My mother appeared at my side, her face fierce with protective anger. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a gentle hug. "How long have you been carrying this alone?" "Too long," I whispered. The officiant, Reverend Williams, looked completely out of his depth. He'd been presiding over weddings for 30 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. He approached me cautiously, as if I might explode into another round of revelations. "Miss Matthews," he said gently, "would you like to call off the ceremony?" I looked around the cathedral at the chaos I'd created. Guests were filing out in groups, some stopping to offer me sympathetic words, others hurrying away to avoid further drama. Marcus was being led away by his law partners for what was clearly going to be a very difficult conversation. Sarah was surrounded by her family, all of them talking at once, trying to understand how their successful daughter had become a criminal. "Yes," I said quietly. "I think we're done here." As the cathedral emptied, I found myself standing alone at the altar where I was supposed to have pledged my eternal love just 30 minutes ago. The white roses and baby's breath decorations looked innocent and pure, completely at odds with the devastation that had just unfolded. Kate approached me carefully. "Emma, how are you holding up?" I considered the question. How was I holding up? I'd just destroyed 2 lives in front of 150 people. I'd turned what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life into a public execution. I'd lost my fiancé, my best friend, and my faith in the people I'd trusted most. But I'd also reclaimed my power. I'd refused to be a victim. I'd made sure that justice was served, even if I'd had to serve it myself. "I'm okay," I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. I'm actually okay. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, Marcus had been placed on administrative leave from his law firm, pending a full investigation into his conduct. The partners were concerned about how his personal scandal might affect their reputation with clients and the bar association. The investigation would take months, but the outcome was inevitable. Marcus's career in law was effectively over. Sarah's situation was even worse. David had filed a police report about the corporate espionage, and the FBI was now involved in investigating the theft and sale of proprietary information. The $50,000 she'd made from selling trade secrets would have to be paid back, along with damages to the affected clients. Her former employer was also pursuing civil charges, but the criminal investigation was just the beginning. Word had spread quickly through the marketing industry about what Sarah had done. She was now unhireable in her field, and likely any field that required background checks or security clearances. Her apartment had been searched as part of the investigation, and she'd been forced to move back in with her parents while awaiting potential charges. The wedding vendors were surprisingly understanding about the situation. The caterer had seen the whole thing unfold. Several of his staff had been working the event and witnessed the chaos firsthand. He refunded my deposit without question. The florist, the photographer, and even the venue coordinator were sympathetic and professional, offering partial refunds and expressing their support. The story went viral within days. Someone had live-streamed the entire event on Instagram, and the video had been shared thousands of times across social media platforms. I became known as the Revenge Bride, and while some people criticized my methods as cruel, the majority of comments were supportive. She did what she had to do. Better to find out before the marriage than after. That's what they get for betraying someone who trusted them. Iconic energy. She served justice in a wedding dress. The attention was overwhelming at first. Random people were recognizing me on the street, and I received hundreds of messages from strangers sharing their own stories of betrayal and revenge. But after the initial media frenzy died down, life began to settle into a new normal. I took a leave of absence from my job to process everything that had happened. The company was supportive, understanding that I needed time to heal from such a public trauma. I spent the first few weeks sleeping, crying, and trying to make sense of how my life had changed so dramatically. The hardest part wasn't losing Marcus. By the time the wedding day arrived, I'd already grieved the end of our relationship. The hardest part was losing Sarah. 10 years of friendship, memories that I'd treasured, inside jokes that now felt tainted by her betrayal. I found myself going through old photos and deleting the ones with her in them, trying to erase her from my history. But slowly, very slowly, I began to heal. I started therapy, working with Dr. Jennifer Chen, no relation to Sarah, thankfully, to process the trauma of betrayal and the complicated emotions around my revenge. She helped me understand that while my actions had been extreme, they'd also been a way of reclaiming my agency in a situation where I'd felt powerless. "You discovered that the 2 people you trusted most had been systematically deceiving you," she explained during one of our sessions. "Your response was to take control of the narrative and ensure that the truth came to light. There's nothing wrong with wanting justice. But did I go too far?" I asked. "I destroyed their lives in front of everyone we knew. They destroyed their own lives through their choices," she replied. "You simply made sure there were consequences for those choices." 3 months after the wedding, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible, thinner, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. His usual confident demeanor had been replaced by something nervous and defeated. "Emma," he said, approaching my table hesitantly. "Can we talk?" I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been working on freelance projects to keep myself busy. "I don't think we have anything to say to each other, Marcus." "Please," he said, sitting down across from me without invitation. "Just 5 minutes." I studied his face, looking for any trace of the man I'd once loved. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize," he said. "Really apologize, not just the panic-driven stuff I said at the wedding." "Okay," I said. "I'm listening." He took a deep breath. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I betrayed your trust, I lied to your face for months, and I was planning to manipulate you into thinking I was cheating with someone else. I was a coward and a fraud, and you deserved so much better." I waited for him to continue. "I know you probably won't believe this, but I did love you," he said. "What happened with Sarah? It started as just physical attraction, but then it became this fantasy where we convinced ourselves that we were meant to be together, that somehow what we were doing was okay because we couldn't help ourselves." "That's bullshit, Marcus," I said calmly. "You had a choice every single day for 4 months. You chose to lie to me. You chose to betray me. You chose to plan my humiliation. Don't pretend like you were some victim of uncontrollable passion." He nodded, accepting the criticism. "You're right. We made those choices. I made those choices." "How's Sarah?" I asked, curious despite myself. His face darkened. "Not good. The FBI investigation is ongoing. She'll probably face criminal charges. Her parents are devastated. She's not handling it well." "And you two? Are you together now that you're both free to be?" He let out a bitter laugh. "No. Turns out our great love didn't survive having consequences. When everything fell apart, we blamed each other. She said I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I said she seduced me away from the woman I was supposed to marry. We brought out the worst in each other, and when the fantasy ended, there was nothing left." I felt a strange sense of satisfaction at that revelation. Their relationship had been built on betrayal and lies. Of course it couldn't survive in the light of day. "I'm sorry for what happened to your career," I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. "I deserved it," he replied. "The Bar Association is reviewing my license. I'll probably be suspended, maybe permanently. But that's a consequence of my actions, not something that happened to me." We sat in silence for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Sure. How long did you know? When did you find out?" "The day I came to Sarah's apartment and found you two together," I said. "I saw everything." His face went white. "That was 2 months before the wedding." "You knew for 2 months and didn't say anything?" "I needed time to figure out how to handle it," I said. "And I wanted to make sure I had all the facts before I acted." "So you planned the whole wedding day revenge?" "I planned to make sure the truth came out in a way that would have consequences for both of you," I corrected. "You'd both been planning to humiliate me after the wedding. I just made sure the humiliation went in the other direction." He stared at me with something like admiration. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." "Yeah," I said. "I am." Marcus stood up to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone who would never dream of treating you the way I did." "I will," I said confidently. "But first I'm going to enjoy being someone who doesn't need anyone else to be happy." 6 months after the wedding, I was living a completely different life. I'd moved to a new apartment across town, far from the places that held memories of Marcus and Sarah. I'd started my own freelance consulting business, helping companies with project management and organizational strategy. The work was challenging and fulfilling, and I was making more money than I ever had as an employee. I'd also started dating again, cautiously but optimately. The whole experience had taught me to trust my instincts and not to ignore red flags in favor of wishful thinking. I was more selective now, more protective of my energy and emotions. One evening, as I was cooking dinner in my new kitchen, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Emma?" It's Sarah." I set down my wooden spoon and leaned against the counter. "How did you get this number?" "Your sister Kate." I begged her to give it to me. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say some things." I considered hanging up. I'd been doing so well, moving forward with my life, and hearing her voice brought back a flood of painful memories. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "Thank you," she whispered. "Emma, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not calling to ask for it. I just need you to know how sorry I am." "Okay, what I did to you was unforgivable. You were my best friend, my sister, and I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I threw away 10 years of friendship for a man who didn't even want me once the fantasy was over." Her voice was shaking, and I could tell she was crying. "I've been in therapy," she continued, "trying to understand how I became someone capable of hurting you like that. I think I was jealous of you. Your relationship with Marcus, your confidence, your success. Instead of dealing with my own insecurities, I tried to take what was yours. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said. No, it doesn't. Nothing excuses it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now how much damage I caused, not just to you, but to myself. How are you doing? I asked, and I was surprised by the genuine concern in my voice. Not great, she admitted. I'm probably going to face criminal charges. I had to move back in with my parents. I'm working at a coffee shop because no one in marketing will hire me. But honestly, the hardest part is knowing that I destroyed the most important relationship in my life. We were both quiet for a moment. Sarah, I said finally, I want you to know that I don't hate you. You don't? No. I hate what you did. I hate how you made me feel. I hate that you stole 4 months of my life by lying to me. But I don't hate you as a person. That's more than I deserve, she said. Maybe. But holding on to hate would just poison my own life. I've worked too hard to build something better to let your betrayal continue controlling me. Are you happy? She asked. I considered the question. Was I happy? Not in the simple, uncomplicated way I'd been before discovering their betrayal. But I was stronger now, more self-aware, more confident in my ability to handle whatever life threw at me. I'm getting there, I said. I'm building a life that's entirely mine, with people who actually deserve my trust. It's different than what I planned, but it's good. I'm glad, she said, and she sounded like she meant it. You deserve all the happiness in the world. So do you, Sarah. After you face the consequences of what you did and do the work to become someone better. I'm trying, she said. I really am. Good luck, I said, and I hung up. A year after the wedding that never was, I was featured in a podcast about women who'd overcome betrayal and rebuilt their lives. The host was fascinated by my story, particularly the planning and execution of my wedding day revenge. Do you regret how you handled it? She asked. Some people might say that public humiliation was too harsh. I thought carefully before answering. I regret that it was necessary, I said. I regret that 2 people I loved chose to betray me so completely that I felt like public exposure was the only way to get justice. But do I regret making sure there were consequences for their actions? No. What would you say to someone who's going through a similar betrayal? First, I'd say that you're stronger than you think you are. When something like this happens, it feels like the end of the world, but it's actually just the end of a chapter. You get to write the next one. And second, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't let people gaslight you into doubting what you know to be true. And when you decide to act, make sure you're acting from a place of strength, not just pain. Any advice about revenge specifically? I laughed. Revenge is a luxury that not everyone can afford. It requires patience, planning, and the emotional strength to see it through. If you're going to pursue it, make sure you're prepared for the consequences. And make sure you have a plan for what comes after. What came after for you? Freedom, I said without hesitation. I'm free from people who didn't value me. I'm free from lies and manipulation. I'm free to build the life I actually want, not the life I thought I was supposed to want. 2 years after the wedding, I received an unexpected piece of mail, a wedding invitation. For a moment, my heart stopped as I wondered if Marcus or Sarah had found someone else to deceive into marrying them. But when I opened the envelope, I laughed out loud. It was from Kate and Tom, renewing their vows for their 10th anniversary. The invitation included a handwritten note. Emma, Tom and I have been married for 10 years, and watching you handle your situation with such strength and grace reminded us how important it is to celebrate real love and real commitment. We'd be honored if you'd stand up with us as we reaffirm our promises to each other. This time, let's have a wedding that's actually about love. Kate. The ceremony was beautiful and simple, held in Kate's backyard with just family and close friends. I stood beside my sister as she and Tom repeated vows they'd written for each other, promises about continued growth, honest communication, and unconditional support. As I watched them exchange rings again, I felt a deep sense of peace. This was what love looked like, not the passionate deception that Marcus and Sarah had confused for love, but the steady, honest commitment to building a life together through all circumstances. During the reception, Kate pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said, "for how you handled everything and for how you've rebuilt your life." "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "The best things never are. But look at you now. You're successful, you're confident, you're surrounding yourself with people who actually deserve you. That bastard Marcus and that snake Sarah did you a favor by showing you who they really were before you were legally tied to one of them." "I know," I said. It's strange to be grateful for the worst thing that ever happened to me, but I am. And, Kate said with a mischievous smile, you've become legendary. Everyone still talks about your wedding day revenge. You're like a folk hero for wronged women everywhere. I laughed. I'm not sure that's the legacy I was aiming for. Maybe not, but it's a pretty good one. You showed everyone that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're too smart or too charming to get caught. As the evening wound down, I found myself thinking about the version of me who had existed 2 years ago. That Emma had been naive, trusting to a fault, willing to overlook red flags in favor of maintaining peace. She'd been so focused on other people's feelings that she'd neglected her own needs and instincts. This Emma was different, stronger, more discerning, less willing to accept poor treatment in the name of keeping others comfortable. I'd learned to trust myself, to value my own judgments, and to act decisively when action was needed. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been educational. I'd learned that people are capable of tremendous deception, even people you love and trust completely. But I'd also learned that I was capable of tremendous strength, even in the face of complete betrayal. Most importantly, I'd learned that my worth wasn't dependent on other people's treatment of me. Marcus's decision to cheat didn't mean I was unlovable. Sarah's decision to betray our friendship didn't mean I was a bad judge of character. Their choices reflected their values, not mine. 3 years after the wedding, I got a call from Janet, the private investigator I'd hired to document Marcus and Sarah's affair. "Emma, I hope you don't mind me calling," she said. "I have some news I thought you might want to hear." "What kind of news?" "It's about Sarah Chen. She was sentenced today for the corporate espionage charges. 2 years in federal prison plus restitution." I sat down slowly. I'd known the criminal case was ongoing, but I'd stopped following it closely as I moved on with my life. "How do you feel about that?" Janet asked. "Honestly, I feel like justice was served," I said. "Not because of what she did to me personally, but because she committed actual crimes. She stole from her employer and sold proprietary information. There have to be consequences for that." "And Marcus? What about him?" "His law license was permanently revoked last month. The Bar Association found that his conduct demonstrated a lack of moral character incompatible with the practice of law." I absorbed this information quietly. Both of their professional lives were over, destroyed by their own choices and actions. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd handled things differently?" Janet asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "If I'd confronted them privately, they might have broken up with me more gently. They might have faced fewer consequences. But they also might have continued lying and manipulating. Marcus might have convinced me that his affair was my fault somehow. Sarah might have played the victim and made me feel guilty for not understanding her connection with my fiancé. They might have gaslit me into accepting some version of events where I was the problem. And you don't think that would have been better?" "No," I said firmly. "I think the truth coming out publicly, with consequences, was exactly what needed to happen. They made their choices with the assumption that they'd never face real repercussions. I made sure that assumption was wrong." 4 years after the wedding, I met David. He was a contractor who'd been hired to renovate the office space for my consulting business. Unlike the slick, polished men I'd dated in the past, David was straightforward and unpretentious. He said what he meant, did what he said he'd do, and treated me with consistent respect and kindness. Our first conversation was about crown molding and electrical outlets, but I found myself looking forward to his daily updates on the renovation progress. When the work was finished, he asked me out for coffee. I should probably mention, I said over our first official date, that I have some relationship baggage. My last engagement ended. Dramatically. "How dramatically?" he asked. I told him the whole story. The betrayal, the investigation, the wedding day revenge. I watched his face carefully, waiting for judgment or alarm. Instead, he started laughing. "I'm sorry," he said, seeing my expression. "I'm not laughing at what happened to you." "That's awful." "I'm laughing because you're basically a superhero." "A superhero?" "You discovered that 2 people you trusted were screwing you over, so you methodically gathered evidence, planned a comprehensive response, and executed it flawlessly in front of everyone they knew. That's not baggage, that's impressive." I felt something in my chest loosen. For the first time since the betrayal, I was with someone who saw my actions as strength rather than instability. "Most people think I went too far," I said. "Most people probably wish they had your backbone," he replied. "You didn't just roll over and accept being treated badly?" You made sure there were consequences for people who thought they could use and manipulate you. You're not worried that I might be crazy? Are you planning to investigate my credit cards and hack my social media? He asked with a grin. Only if you give me a reason to? Then I think we're good. David and I dated for 2 years before he proposed. The proposal was simple and honest. No elaborate schemes or public displays, just the two of us on my apartment balcony on a random Tuesday evening. I love you, he said, getting down on one knee. I love your strength, your intelligence, your refusal to accept anything less than honesty and respect. I want to build a life with you based on trust and partnership. Will you marry me? The ring was beautiful but not ostentatious, a classic solitaire that reflected his practical nature and genuine affection, rather than a need to impress anyone else. Yes, I said, and I meant it completely. Our wedding was everything the first one should have been. Small, intimate, filled with people who genuinely cared about us and supported our relationship. No drama, no lies, no hidden agendas. Just two people who'd chosen each other with full knowledge of who they really were. As I walked down the aisle toward David, I thought briefly about that other wedding, the one that had ended in spectacular destruction. That day had felt like the end of everything, but it had actually been the beginning. The beginning of understanding my own strength, my own worth, my own capacity for both justice and healing. Marcus and Sarah had taught me that people are capable of devastating betrayal, but David was teaching me that people are also capable of honest love, consistent support, and genuine partnership. The officiant asked if anyone had any reason why David and I shouldn't be wed. The cathedral was silent except for the sound of happy tears and supportive smiles. No one stood up. No dramatic revelations appeared on screens. No lives were destroyed. Just two people promising to love, honor, and cherish each other, surrounded by people who believed in that promise. As David and I exchanged vows, I felt a deep sense of completion. Not because I needed him to make me whole, but because I was whole enough to choose a partner who enhanced rather than diminished my life. The woman who had stood in a wedding dress 4 years ago, planning revenge while her world fell apart, would be proud of the woman I'd become. Stronger, wiser, more discerning, but also more open to real love when it finally arrived. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so much better that the thing you lost becomes irrelevant. Marcus and Sarah had given me the gift of showing me exactly what I didn't want in a relationship. David was showing me what I did want. As we kissed to seal our marriage, I felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought me here, for the strength I'd discovered within myself, and for the man who loved me not despite my scars, but because of the wisdom they'd taught me. The reception was joyful and relaxed, filled with dancing, laughter, and genuine celebration. No one was pretending to be someone they weren't. No one was hiding affairs or planning betrayals. It was exactly what a wedding should be, a celebration of real love and real commitment. Late that night, as David and I sat on the balcony of our honeymoon suite, I thought about the path that had led me here. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately saved me from a life built on lies. The revenge that some had called cruel had taught me that I was capable of fighting for myself when no one else would. Any regrets? David asked, following my gaze as I looked out at the city lights. About the wedding? About my life? About anything? No, I said, taking his hand. No regrets at all, and I meant it. Every painful step, every difficult decision, every moment of doubt and determination had brought me to this place, married to a man who saw and valued the real me, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about my happiness, living a life I'd built entirely on my own terms. Marcus and Sarah had thought they were stealing my future. Instead, they'd freed me to create a better one. That's the thing about revenge. Sometimes the best kind isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about building a life so fulfilling that their betrayal becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. I'd started this journey as a woman who'd lost everything she thought she wanted. I was ending it as a woman who'd found everything she actually needed. And that felt like the sweetest revenge of all.